This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 13th of October 2020, and I am 2J.
And I am GK. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, lessons shocker for pupils, tutors. In the Standard, the big gamble. And in the Star, lesson 1 of back to school, don't share. So it's 3 headlines all speaking to schools opening.
Schools,
and it is schools not in the usual way.
Yeah, so of course school started yesterday for I think grade 4, standard 8 and Form 4 candidates. And so the Daily Nation is telling us that they will be expected to attend school earlier, leave later, with the possibility of even having classes on a Saturday. They're saying that they've had to compress the typical year calendar into just 11 weeks. And this is in a bid to make sure that they align themselves with what would start as the new school year in 2021. I think it's quite interesting. I think it's not necessarily unfair. I think a lot of the kids and the teachers have had an extended period of holiday that was unprecedented. So I think it's okay. For example, they have 1 week of Christmas holiday, as far as I understand. They go from the 25th and they're back on the 2nd of January. Very short holiday. But one other thing that Magoha said was that there would be no possibility of school visits, and that's just in an effort to make sure that everybody stays safe, which I agree with 100%.
I agree, and I'm really glad that they agreed not to scrap the whole school year. I mean, I thought that was too extreme, and I'm glad that the Ministry of Education has found some middle ground here. And even if the kids have to go to school a little bit longer, I think it will be worth it so that they don't have to skip
a year, of course.
Have to be.
My only question was, are we doing speed over quality?
Okay,
but I guess that's going to be a question for how prepared the teachers are, how prepared the students are. So we'll see what happens.
So we, in the Standard, we have the big gamble.
The big gamble, and I like where 2J left and say it's a big gamble, because I think we are in a double bind here. Parents, what the Standard is telling us, parents not know whether to take their kids to school because they could be infected there. Or to keep them home. Now, see, if we get a spike in COVID cases, we could go the South Korea way, where there was a spike in cases after schools were opened, and after the spike in cases, government closed schools there. But also, the reason for the double bind is, when do we know when do we think this thing will go away, will end? I mean, we cannot, we cannot,
we can only speculate.
And given that this is our new normal, other countries around the world are increasing their ways of tracking. So the idea here is knowing which schools have any outbreaks and really putting that on a platform that people can see. Because I think tracing becomes more crucial now more than ever. And people can crowdsource. I think digital technology and things can assist with this. And this will be a step forward in sort of containing any sort of second waves that come up. I love the Star. The Star says the lesson number 1 of back to school was don't share. So the question the teacher asked was, if you kept your used mask in a bag before getting a new one, but your classmate does not have one, what do you do? And then all the kids are like, you share. That's the wrong answer. You're not supposed to share. And the idea here is that they're having to sort of teach kids again that, generosity and sharing was good in the other sort of context, but in this context, you have to be a little bit more selfish. And basically Nick beggings. You can't share masks. But I mean, so kids sort of are gonna have to adjust. They haven't seen their friends.
Learning curve.
Haven't seen their friends in 7 months. So there's stories here about how they share seats on their way home, things like that. And so it'll be interesting to see how they start to adjust. Some in Baringo don't even have schools to go back to because of all the flooding that's been happening.
And I think going on what Turam was saying, with the second wave of cases we saw in like South Korea and Australia, South Africa, it's because kids by nature just want to touch each other, to share. I was reading a story in the US about a mother who sent her son to school with a blue mask and he came home with a pink mask. So of course it happens, like how did it, you come home with different shoes, a different bag. So.
And I think for the younger kids, coming up with catchy phrases is going to work. There's one called catch it, bin it, kill it. And the approach here is to ensure that we have good respiratory sort of behavior. When you have a tissue, you put it in the bin. So schools need to meet that criteria as well in terms of having many bins, washing stations, tissues, all those things.
Yeah.
But I like that they were all on the same page.
Yes.
We have a 3-part criteria that we will use to break down the headlines. We will ask ourselves, are they topical or speculative? Are they repetitive or groundbreaking? And are they thoughtful or just plain lazy? I think they're all thoughtful. They're all topical.
However, I like the phrasing of the Standard and the Star.
I had a thought, guys. I mean, I think we should throw all these newspapers away because there's no politics here.
Oh my God.
Haven't you realized I've been so quiet? I mean,
Kevin, just needs to say impeachment.
Impeachment.
Say Ruto.
It needs to be.
You didn't see Ruto.
Man.
I'm surprised you didn't find a way to tie it into any of these headlines. But I do like, because this is the future generation of our country. So we are keeping them. And maybe I think we should go with the Star.
Maybe Ruto can donate some of those big water tanks. Is that good enough for you to have?
But spray them with sanitizer.
Okay. Can we give it to the Star?
I agree, let's give it to the Star.
There you have it. The Star gives us our winning headline. Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
So Iga, the Nation, has drawn it's a caricature of GK right here. You can see she's looking. It's GK, government of Kenya. And it's a teacher drawing some things on the blackboard. It's actually a green board. And the student seems very bewildered there.
Very perplexed.
This is safety, infrastructure, mask enrollment.
No, you have to do it properly.
Yeah, GK, tell us what's on the
GK,
board.
tell us.
Safety over infrastructure.
You're the one who's teaching us.
Divided by mass.
Yeah. Tell us.
And then there's a graph there showing enrollment and isolation.
Yeah.
Exams times capacity over syllabus. I mean, this is water, bod mass, A plus B squared. I loved it.
Yeah, you would
I thought
know.
it was so funny because of all the confusion that Magoha has had to go through trying to come up with a plan for schools to reopen.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we should park it.
Okay.
You want to vote for yourself, huh?
Yes. GK votes for GK.
Gado, you have Gado. And it's a drawing of people. Is that, what do you call it? This is rehab.
We'll read the sign.
This is rehab.
Gamblaholics
yes,
and
so have
Betaholics.
Gamblaholics, Betaholics, Anonymous. And there you've got, looks, it's not Gado, but someone in the crowd saying, Psst, I bet you 1K he won't last a week here.
I have no idea what the context of this cartoon is.
Yeah, I thought it may have been the news that came out that there was 1 billion shillings in Fuliza loans every day that had just come out, or maybe the betting that's increased because football is back. I don't know.
Okay, we're tossing it based on that.
Yeah, we toss it.
So the Star.
My favorite one is a caricature.
Because it's political.
Politics.
Absolutely. You have a caricature of William Ruto and he's been trapped. And it seems like he was headed to the seat of power. And the seat of power has been occupied by Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga and Fred Matiang'i. And there's a series of traps before Ruto gets there. And the caption there is, politicking is not permitted, including but not limited to prayers and endorsements. Look, I think this...
if you want us to laugh, you have to read it with like enthusiasm.
I don't want you to laugh.
The thing is here,
I was not telling a joke.
The 3 are in a trap themselves.
Yes.
Should they leave it as well?
Or is it the trappings of power? I don't know.
Maybe, but I really want to focus on William Ruto here. See,
shocker.
Impeachment.
The second trap here is impeachment, and that's my reading of it. And I think it's coming very soon. You see, and I was asking you, 2J.
Yes.
Can a deputy president who's impeached run for office?
And I said, yes, you can. But it depends on the way in which you were impeached.
On the charges.
Yes, on the charges.
Now look, if Deputy President William Ruto is impeached on charges, they could be whatever abuse of office charges or whatever it is. If those charges are taken to court, then and the case is in court, can he run again can he run for office as president?
Well, it depends if he's found guilty, and it depends on the charges, because there's a number of ways you can be impeached. You know, there is a specific charge, a criminal charge, there is a vote of no confidence, you know, a manner of things. So I guess if he, for example, if I will be very vague and careful with my words, if a person who is sitting in office is impeached on a criminal charge, for example, embezzlement or theft or something like that, and it is taken to court and they are then found guilty, I think, as GK was also rightly telling us, that IEBC would refuse to accept you as a political candidate.
Absolutely.
Because you have a criminal charge sheet.
Yes. So I think that's where
you rest your case.
However, I was very vague. Yeah. I wasn't speaking about anybody.
Okay, so between...
I'm sure someone at Mazingira House is listening to you.
Between the Star and the Daily Nation, guys, who do we give it to?
The Star.
GK, the way you read the Daily Nation,
you give it to us?
Yeah, it was fantastic.
No, the Star wins. The guy is political. This teacher here, I mean, how can Iga win, honestly? Even you. As much as you are on this cartoon, GK, man, you cannot win this one.
Okay,
give it to
I'll
the
give
Star.
it to you too.
Yeah.
There you have it. The Star gives us our winning cartoon. And now for our final thought. But before we get there, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled The Dirt on Clean, an Unsanitized History by Catherine Aschenberg.
Yes. So this week's theme is that we'll be looking into microhistories, which is a deep dive into one specific topic. So yesterday we looked at Uncommon Grounds, which was a microhistory into where coffee came from and where it's going and what it has done to us as a society. And today we look at sanitation. How apt. Right? Yeah. So if there's one thing I learned from this book, it's that a majority of medieval Europe was a very smelly place. Yeah. And according to Aschenberg's history of cleanliness in the Western world, royalty of that era rarely ever bathed, if ever, and they preferred instead a constant supply of clean sheets and perfumes.
Yes.
So for the aristocratic 17th century Frenchman, it meant that he only changed his shirts and probably washed his hands in the morning. For the Roman in the 1st century, it involved 2 or more hours of splashing, soaking, and steaming in bodies of water of various temperatures. They would then rake off the sweat and oil from their body, add more oil to their body. Yeah. This was done daily in the company of many other people, and it was all done without soap. And so many cultures of the ancient time actually found body odor very appealing in an appealing way. And the funniest illustration that she gives in the book was a letter that Napoleon wrote to his wife, Josephine. And he wrote, and I will quote, "I will return to Paris in 5 days. Stop washing." I'll let you do with that as you please. But for today, the modern, like more middle-class person in various countries around the world, cleaning is part of your morning routine. And it includes a shower, a bath, brushing your teeth, maybe washing your hair. But this book reveals that many people in different countries around the world in different times, that isn't necessarily what constituted a clean body. And so she traces the roots of Western cleanliness back to its origins in the gymnasiums of Greece and the opulent bathhouses of Rome. Yes. So keeping ourselves clean, just like eating, drinking, and socializing, isn't just a simple everyday activity, but she says it's one that is filled with cultural and historical meaning. And she reveals that the Greeks debated about whether using hot water was weak and feminine and was a luxury, and the Romans, in their lavish bathhouses, obviously didn't seem to have the same problem, because for them being in a hot bathhouse was a sign of luxury and status. Yes. And most interestingly, I found in the book was a very relative and recent history of things like deodorant and toothpaste and tooth whiteners. But of course these products are made by companies, huge corporations that rake in millions of dollars a year. Absolutely. And this cosmetics industry, they seek to make profits by latching onto our personal insecurities about offensive body odors or yellow teeth or having a smell. But this actually got me thinking about hyper cleanliness. And that's because there's this growing body of work from doctors that are suggesting that too much cleanliness is actually causing us to develop allergies, asthma, inflammation, and other autoimmune diseases. And this is actually called the hygiene hypothesis. And the idea is that many children, specifically in the global north, so or more of these developed countries, lack an exposure to bacteria, to viruses, and to allergens that actually creates immunity in your body. And so this gives them an increased chance of disorders. And again, that got me thinking about corona. Why is it that us African countries or these third world countries, the Latin Americas, the Indias of the world, why are we doing far better than our more equipped counterparts? Is it because we have open, exposed, latrines and whatnot, that we are exposed to more bacteria that has allowed us to be stronger? I don't know. Food for thought, but I don't have an answer.
Tujay, that British doctor who said that Africa is survived, it's actually a BBC journalist. He said that Africa has survived corona because of poverty. I think he was right. Look, have you ever seen a street urchin complaining of food poisoning?
Tell us, GK. In chapter 4 of the book, she goes on to talk about the passion for clean linen. And so she chronicles this idea of hygiene in the 1550s through to 1750s. Now, most of us, like TJ said, wash our faces on a daily basis without even giving it much thought. But at the beginning of the 18th century, this was the most uncommon event. And this is why, in the book, they tell us of this letter that was written by a German-born princess. Now, she, in 1705, is going through driving from village to village, and when she gets to her destination, she is covered in dust. And she writes in her letter that she was forced to do something so singular that she had to report it. I had to wash my face. It was so dusty. Yeah. Can you imagine having to write a letter that says that? But because it was how they became clean was to change their sheets or to change their undergarments and their clothes. They didn't wash themselves. And so through the chapter, you have other incidences. Elizabeth I of England only bathed once a month. Elizabeth's successor, James I, washed only his fingers. And the body smell of Henry IV of France was so notorious, as was that of his son Louis XIII, that he boasted, I take after my father, I smell of armpits. And he was really proud of that. But there's a guy in the 16th century called Michel de Montaigne, and he was sort of saddened by the demise of this showering. And he said, I consider bathing healthful, and I believe that we incur no slight disadvantages to our health for having it, having lost this custom. But the medical authorities of the 18th century believed that blocked pores kept infection away from you. And so you have a situation where in the 17th and the 18th centuries, there were lots of plagues. There was the Great Plague of 1665 in London, that 100,000 Londoners died. A third of Stockholm's population perished in the plague of 1710. And in Marseille, you also have plagues that are killing people. So they believed that the plague stemmed from waterborne sort of diseases. So they were really anti-water at this point. And then we have some people saying that bathing fills the head with vapors. And it is the enemy of nerves and ligaments, which it loosens. So every time you're sitting in a bath, you're loosening things. And they said that people who used to take baths were more exposed to getting gout. So, I mean, there was all sorts of theories. And so in the French region, they had these manuals of etiquette called Civilité that were published between 1500 and 1839. And they found instructions on cleaning. But can you imagine, they only instructed people to clean their hands, their face, and their hair up until the mid-18th century. And it was only after that people were told to wash their feet. And then in 1820, after that, you were told now you could wash the rest of your body, immerse yourself in water. Now, for these Europeans who had traveled to Muslim regions, this is where it gets interesting, because the Muslim religion sort of has a ritual of bathing often. And so they said, this is the Europeans, they wash themselves clean from their manifold of sins, which they commit daily. Wow. So either their religion is strangely scrupulous or they're extraordinarily sinful, or both. So to the Europeans, the Muslims were showering often because they were sinning so often. And so the idea is that they would cleanse their sins away every day. Yeah. Interesting. Very. So now I'll end with this. Louis XIII of France was born in 1601. And a court physician kept his washing history, which was not lengthy. It wasn't long at all. At 6 weeks, his head was massaged. At the 7 weeks, his cradle cap was brushed with butter and almond oil. The baby's hair was not combed until he was 9 months. He only was washed at the age of 5, and they only washed his feet with tepid water. No, thank you.
GK and 2J. I want to ask you guys a question.
Oh boy.
Do you prefer taking a bath or a shower?
I prefer a shower. A shower?
Yeah, because you don't want gout, yeah?
Yeah, we don't want to loosen ligaments.
You know, it is said that the English, the Brits, spend a fifth of their lives in a washing basin.
Who gave you that statistic?
It's the book.
Okay.
Now, but I took chapter 6, the story of a Frenchman who found British bathing not so stylish, but at the same time very luxurious at the same time. Yeah. On a visit to England in the 1960s, a Frenchman, his name was Hippolyte Tainet, found houses deficient, English houses deficient in taste. On the outside, he says they veered from bland to overly picturesque, like toys made out of painted cardboard. Inside, they liked the French style, right, with matching colors and styles of furniture. But what they lacked in appearance, they made up for comfort and service. So he describes an English bathroom. So he says on his dressing table, on an English dressing table, Tyne found a large jug, a small jug, a medium one for hot water, 2 basins, a toothbrush dish, 2 soap dishes, and a water bottle with tumbler. On the shelf underneath the shallow zinc tub for the morning sponge bath, nearby was a towel horse with 4 different kinds of towel, one very thick. In the morning, a servant brought a hot jug of water and a linen mat to stand on while washing, and the water was replenished before lunch and dinner. That was the British way of living. Now, you know, this thing reminded me of a book that we did. It's got nothing to do with showering. And by the way, I found it very, very awkward reading this book. Very awkward. With a story that depicts the French ways, the difference between the French ways and the English ways. And it's a story of a former US ambassador. His name was
in which book?
It's called The Reds and the Blacks. Sorry, I did not mention that. By William Atwood, and he described the difference between a francophone civil servant and an anglophone civil servant. And he said when you went to the house of a francophone civil servant, he entertained you with wine, everything, you know. The style was magnificent, but it took 6 months for him to do whatever you asked him to do. They were so inefficient.
They were just drinking
they were just drinking and enjoying, and they had the style and they had the music and ways of dressing. Absolutely
like fun.
Fantastic. But if you went home to the home of an Anglophone civil servant, they were boring. They did not entertain you. In fact, you are much more likely to find a state officer like Ruto having managu for dinner and washing it all down with milk. But they were very effective and very efficient. They did all the tasks in 1 week.
Fantastic.
So wait, Tuam, which lifestyle are you aspiring for?
The French, I suspect.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both, okay. Moderation.
So, on a day where we had a winning headline from the Star and a winning cartoon from the Star, let's take it back to smells and hygiene. People have been conditioned. No one wants to risk smelling like an actual human. 'Tis a misdemeanor. And the goal is to now smell like exotic fruits like mangoes, papaya, and passion fruit. Or even a cookie, vanilla, coconut, ginger. The standard we read about in magazines and see on TV is a sterilized and synthetic one, as if we're not even on this earth. So it's okay to be a little bit smelly, but still remember to wash your hands. We're living in a pandemic.
Yes.
And subscribe to our YouTube channel.
I wonder why they didn't mention banana.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Find us on TV. We're on GoTV, Time for you to earn, and stuff.